There we go! Finally, the amount of...
Wait, Scott, what are you doing? Scott, what are you doing?
Till he gets to his part!
Nah, I don't want to play this silly game. I want to do it this way. I want to do it exactly this way.
How did the guy with no friends get?
Ever since Grian announced the 6th installment of the Life series, not counting Secret Life, I've been thinking about how hard it really is to come up with a premise for the Life series. So naturally, I designed 3 of them. You see, there are 2 conditions to create a good premise for the Life series. Firstly, it must have, obviously, the 3-life system with the green, yellow, and red lives. And secondly, it must incite conflict in a natural way. Because if left alone, the players are just going to get along with each other. They have no reason to be enemies, so the series must give them a reason to be enemies. Such as tasks in Secret Life or the Boogeyman in Last Life and Limited Life. And this second condition is the hardest part about making a new Life series, other than the actual idea itself. If you just look at the most recent part of the series, Secret Life, you'll see that it actually doesn't fulfill this condition all the way. While the task system did create a lot of shenanigans between people and it set up a lot of rivalries, it actually hindered the members from pursuing conflict with each other and deepening the plot of the different rivalries between different groups, because people were more focused on doing their tasks than they were gaining an advantage over their enemies or building rivalries and making enemies in the first place. This is especially apparent by the fact that the last task of the series completely disregarded the task system in general, and it just had the players win Secret Life as their task. So without further ado, let's get into the first premise. Our first premise is called Rival Life. Basically, it is the inverse of Double Life, so instead of having tied health bars where you have the same health at all times, you have inverse health bars. How does that work? Well, first of all, it uses the ultra-hardcore system like Secret Life did, where there is no regeneration and you lose hearts permanently when you take damage. And then the inverse part is satisfied by having 2 available health bars, so everyone starts off with the default vanilla health bar, and then as you or your rival takes damage, you fill up your second health bar. So if in this example Grian and Cleo are rivals, and Grian falls off of a cliff, Grian takes 2 hearts of damage, and thus Cleo would gain 2 hearts of health on her second health bar. Now the next question is, what happens if you or your rival die? Unlike Double Life, you and your rival are not tied to the exact same life that you have to be on, so if Grian takes his last damage and goes down the yellow, Cleo would normally gain another life, but that would put her at full, and Grian has to respawn, and he would respawn with 1 full health bar. And because both of them are still alive, Cleo would have to be reset to their original singular health bar. If someone dies on their last life, instead of being reset because one member is out of the game, the other one will keep both health bars, and they just have 2 health bars until the end of the season, or the series, or until they die again and then they're on red, if they weren't already red. One problem with the inverse health system is that players could take damage at the same rate as their rival and just trade hearts back and forth without either of them ever really dying. However, this isn't that much of an issue, simply because in a normal Life series, you just have people regenerating in between encounters like this anyway, back up to full health. And usually when you die, it's not little bits at a time. Even with Ultra Hardcore, it happens, but a lot of the time it is all in one go, like being jumped on by 5 other members, or blowing up to 15 TNT Mark cards. There is still a solution to this that I have worked out, and it is where if 2 players take damage at the same time, as being defined as like within the same second or something, then neither of them will regenerate any health. So if Grian were to take 2 damage from a zombie, and then Cleo were to take 4 damage from being hit by an enemy, and that were to happen within the same second before it updates, then neither of them would regenerate anything, even if they took different amounts of damage. So there is a way to get the net amount of hearts between rivals down. It's just not that likely. My last deliberation about rival life is that while it is implied that the members should be rivals with their rival and they should be enemies, supported by the fact that they benefit from each other's misfortune, it might actually be more tactically efficient to team up with your rival because your health is linked. However, I don't think this is really an issue. It's just more interesting than anything to see how different people would take the premise. Obviously, we had in Double Life, we had two doubles who rejected the implied premise of having to be on the same side as your soulmate. So the only thing telling people that they have to be enemies with their rivals being the implication by the name of the series isn't a bad thing. It's just interesting to see how different people will take different approaches to the series. Anyways, that was Rival Life. I think it could be a very interesting premise, and that would create a lot of very interesting dynamics between members with their rivals. And let's get on to the next one. Our next premise is called Hunted Life, and it is basically an expansion on the Boogeyman system. It introduces new rules such as the target, the guardian, the decoy, and the bounty. Here's how it works. First off, we have the Boogeyman, and the Boogeyman, instead of being able to hunt just anyone, is given a choice of 2 targets to hunt. This is so that you don't have Boogeymen who are told to hunt down their teammates, and they are given a choice to reduce the chances of that happening. But you all know how the Boogeyman works. Let's get on to the new stuff. The target knows that they are a target of the Boogeyman, but they are not told who the Boogeyman is, and they are not allowed to tell other people that they are the targets. The next rule is known as the Guardian. The Guardian's job is to make sure that the Boogeyman does not kill one of the targets. The Guardian is given a choice of 2 people who could be the Boogeyman. One of them is, of course, the Boogeyman. The other one is the decoy. The Guardian does not know who the Boogeyman is and who the decoy is, and must investigate and figure out which one it is. The decoy does not know that they are the decoy. The Guardian, of course, knows that they are the Guardian, but is unable to tell other people that they are the Guardian. We'll discuss the Guardian's punishment for not completing this task later on. Our last new role is called the Bounty. The Bounty is basically a player who could be killed by anyone, reds, yellows, or greens, and anyone who kills the Bounty is rewarded with a life. Now you'll be asking, why are greens allowed to kill the Bounty? Wouldn't it make more sense and be more in the spirit of the original Third Life for the greens to be entirely peaceful and not able to kill the Bounty? However, I disagree with that because I think it's important to give the members an opportunity to be truly evil, to be so greedy, so gluttonous, and so audacious that they will kill someone for life when they don't even really need it. Circling back to the Guardian's punishment, now that you know what the Bounty is, basically if the Guardian fails and they don't prevent the Boogeyman from killing one of the targets, the Guardian is automatically one of the bounties in the next session, in addition to the regular randomly chosen bounty. It is still possible to have more than one Boogeyman, even though each Boogeyman has 4 other people that are involved in the system. If there are 2 Boogeymen on the server, the systems can overlap. They just can't have the exact same role. So you can't be the Guardian for both Boogeymen, but you can be the Guardian for one Boogeyman system and be the target of another Boogeyman. And for the last detail, Hunted Life would bring back the 2 to 6 lives that everyone starts with from Last Life. My only deliberation with Hunted Life is the Boogeyman's punishment. While the target system is cool, it also makes the Boogeyman's job a lot more difficult, which would make the punishment for failing as the Boogeyman a lot more punishing and a lot more unfair. Even if you reduce the Boogeyman's punishment to, say, only losing 1 life, it's still a little bit worse simply because having more options but higher stakes is more interesting than having less options but lower stakes. So while I like the target system, and I think it's very interesting, it's worth noting that any group of people who wanted to do this premise might want to consider rethinking the target system or even completely getting rid of it. If you have any suggestions to make the target system work with the Boogeyman's punishment, please let me know. Anyway, that's all for Hunted Life. Let's get on to the last premise. If you're disappointed by how the last 2 premises were based off of previous Life series, Rival Life being based off of Double Life and Hunted Life being based off of Last Life, then look no further for this next premise, because this one is entirely unique. And it's called Revival Life. The basic premise is that instead of each player being given a certain amount of lives, the players will share a general pool of lives equal to 4 times the number of members, without any lives being allocated to specific members. In addition to this, when members die, they won't immediately respawn. Instead, they will drop their heads on death, and they will need to be revived at the altar. The altar is a structure that will be placed centrally on the map, and it has a pool to signify the amount of lives that are still remaining. If you wanted to revive a teammate of yours who had died, or just someone who died, you would place their head on the altar. It would probably strike lightning or something. They would respawn right there, and the pool would be one life emptier. Now onto a few important things to note about revival life. First off, the heads are completely indestructible. They would not be able to burn or be exploded or be thrown into a cactus or fall into the void. Maybe they would get placed on the ground instead of dropping as an item, even. Anyway, there is supposed to be no way for the member to actually lose their head and be unable to be revived. Speaking of being unable to be revived, if you have died, you aren't just out of the game until someone revives you. You can actually traverse the world as a spirit. This is to ensure that if someone finds themselves unable to respawn temporarily for some reason, like their head is lost, or maybe they don't have an alliance and they need to go and convince someone to track down their head and revive them, they can do that. Or if they just didn't know where they died, they could use their spirit to go back to where they died and tell people, hey, this is where I died, can you come get my head? Also, the fact that you cannot revive yourself on your own means that alliances and deals are a lot more important in revival life than they are in any other life series, because you literally need to have friends in order to survive. And if you don't have any allies to revive you, you will surely be on the losing end of any deal that you try to make with anyone to get them to revive you. Another small detail is that while there will be an altar and pool in a central location on the surface, I would also want to have another altar that is in a hidden location somewhere on the server that none of the members know about, just in case that can be interesting later on. As for how the life system works, everyone would start at dark green because, 4 times the number of members' lives in the pool, and then you would progress down as you die. When the pool becomes half empty, all of the players will be automatically set to their yellow lives. This is so that we can accelerate the series when the average player is at their yellow life. There will still be a lot of people who are still on their green or even dark green lives simply because the lives aren't allocated, so you won't have any mass purging events of the greens like in other life series. So setting everyone to yellow is a good way to get everyone closer to being able to do PvP against each other without having to have everyone die. But then what happens when the pool runs dry and there are no more lives left to revive anyone with? Well, of course, everyone must be red, and everyone's spirits are banished. This means that once the lives are empty because no one can be revived anymore, and you can't just have spirits running around all the time, that gives no impact to people's final deaths because you can still see them and talk to them. So, of course, all of these spirits must immediately be banished, and no longer seen or heard from again. Also, of course, everyone must be red because there's no way to die and be revived as a red life anymore, so you need to have everyone able to do PvP. All in all, this is the most interesting premise I've come up with so far for a few different reasons. Firstly, it makes you depend a lot more on your allies and friendships because you aren't able to revive yourself without them. Secondly, it turns lives into a controllable resource. I could totally see someone holding the altar captive and making sure that only some people are allowed to get lives, or enforcing the amount of lives that everyone is allowed to use. Another interesting byproduct of this system is that it allows people to hold you captive after you die. If you were to die and your enemy gets to your head before your allies do, suddenly there has to be a lot of bargaining involved to get you back. And lastly, calling back to the original conditions that a life series must fulfill, Revival Life has a lot of inherent conflict built into it, simply because some people die more often than others, and it's going to cause a lot of strain on the members when you have less lives to supply yourself because someone else is dying more and being more careless than you are, and that creates a lot of natural conflict for people to build off of. Anyway, it's going to be it for Revival Life, and I just want you all to know that I am 100% confident and serious in these premises. If I had more subscribers, I would totally be reaching out to people and building a network of people who want to do an idea like this, and I would totally be learning how to code and making these ideas myself. So make sure that if you want to see things like this happen, that you hit that subscribe button and let me know that you actually want to see this content. And I know this is a long shot, but if anyone wants to use these ideas in their own knockoff life series, whether it be for content or for just you and your friends, feel free to. If you are doing it as a part of like a YouTube series, then maybe credit me. Again, I know it's a long shot still, but I want to cover all my bases. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'm so excited to see what Season 6 of the Life series has in store for us, and I'll see you in the next one.